I went from feeling like I was ugly and uninteresting, and I'd be lucky to have a few friends, to suddenly having people asking me out, and people not only asking me out, but asking me to do other things with them. And
I am Kay Anderson, and you are listening to Lost Spaces, a podcast that mourns the death of queer nightlife. Every episode, I talk to a different person about a venue from their past, the memories they created there, and the people that they used to know. Darryl Bullock is the author behind books such as David Bowie Made Me Gay and Florence Foster Jenkins, The Life of the World's Worst Opera Singer. We met up in a previous episode to discuss crackers in Gloucester, and throughout the interview, Darryl kept bringing up Bath Tap, a bar in Bath, England, that he would go on to frequent when he became a mature-age student and moved to the city. So, I invited him back to reminisce about life in his grotty, miserable bedsit, freaky sex with a fantasist, and enormous bags of bacon.
It was just after my 30th birthday. I had been trying to enroll in a journalism course at South Bristol College, and I'd missed the deadline for enrollment the previous year. So I tried again in 1994, this was, and August 94, I was 30 years old. So I just before my 30th birthday, I moved from Gloucester, where I was living at the time, where I was back living with my mother after having had. This is a long story. I'm going to try and praise it. I'd moved to London for a short while to run a record shop. The guy that ran the record shop was an absolute crook and left me right in the middle of it. Just left me high and dry. And I had all sorts of problems with staff who was stealing from me. One staff member whose brother tried to kill me by running me off the road. And I was getting all sorts of, I was getting all sorts of hassle. I had people come around to my flat, banging on the doors all night, threatening to beat me up just because I was trying to run this business and trying to deal with some very, very dodgy staff he had. And after about 3-4 months, it all fell apart. So I got myself back out of there, went back to Gloucester for a year. During that time, I applied to go to college because I decided I had enough of working in shops and pubs and stuff after what would have been then best part of 14 years, I guess, from leaving school. So I need to do something different. And the only thing I knew how to do, apart from sell records or serve beer, was to write, because I'd always written. Even as a kid, I wrote lyrics and poems. I mean, they're dreadful, but I wrote them anyway. And little bits of short stories, and filled copious notebooks with ideas for novels. And I wrote and all sorts of. I wrote a novel. I mean, how pretentious is that? I still have it. It's just awful. But I always wrote. I was always scribbling on backs of packets and. You know, when I used to play in a band, I was designing LP sleeves and writing the spiel on the back and all that kind of stuff. And always had this thing about writing in my head. Although I was dreadful at English at school, I barely scraped an O level. But I decided I didn't want to work in shops anymore. I'd done a few years working in pubs and hotels, didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to do something with my life. And I decided at that point, I want to go to college. I want to learn journalism. I want to learn the rules of journalism. Not because I wanted to be a journalist, but I wanted to be a writer, and I wanted to know how to write correctly. I wanted to know how you wrote for magazines and how you wrote for newspapers and how you wrote books, because they're all very different disciplines. And I didn't know any of this. So I thought, I'm going to go and do this journalism course. I'm going to learn how to be a writer, and then give that. My plan was to give this a couple of years to see if I could make a living, make a go out of it. And if not, I'd only be, 32, 33 at that point. I could still go and do something else. So that was the kind of plan in my head. So I'd applied to college. I got into college eventually on the second application, and the college was in Bristol. I didn't want to live in Bristol because I'd had a really bad experience here years beforehand. I got mugged in Bristol when I was maybe, I don't know, 8 years before, something like that. And it kind of put me off the place. It wasn't a major violent mugging, but I was mugged, and it did kind of put me off living here. Mm. But I had a friend that lived in Bath, which is only, 10, 12 miles away from Bristol. And I've been to visit him several times. And Bath's beautiful. It's a beautiful little chocolate box city. And I thought I could live there happily. And Bath, as I said, is only kind of 12 miles from Bristol. It was fairly easy to commute, to go to college. I could actually get the train and walk from the train station out to where the college was in Bedminster, which I did for that first year. And it was great. So I was doing the course. I was loving the course. Within 5 months of starting this journalism course, not wanting to be a journalist, I had my first article published in a local newspaper. And it was I was getting great reaction from what I was writing. My tutors loved what I was doing. I was really enjoying what I did and what I was doing, rather. And so I decided this is definitely what I want to do with the rest of my life. And it's what I've done ever since. Course is going great, but I was living in this absolute hovel in Bath. I mean, it really genuinely was a hovel. I had no money. The course wasn't expensive because I was a mature student, so I wasn't paying a lot for that. But I had no money. So I was claiming housing benefit, and I was earning a bit of underhand money by cleaning people's houses. And I was living in this absolute grotty, this awful grotty bedsit in a basement of a house. It was moldy, it was damp, it was just awful. And I had this insane landlady who lived above me, who would just scream out of the windows when she saw me, just give me all sorts of abuse.
What?
Yeah. She shouted at one time that she couldn't understand why all these men were coming to my house, even though there were two, and one of them was the friend that lived up the road, kind of thing,
I was hopeful that would go in a different direction and I'd get some salacious stories.
We kind of made peace when she became ill and I started doing her shopping, and suddenly everything was lovely. That was fine.
So suddenly she needed you.
Yeah, exactly that. She needed me. I helped her out. And then for the rest of the time, she was great to me, and she was absolutely evil to all of her friends. She was a bitch, but never mind. And then around about, it must have been the late spring, early summer of the following year, so 1995, there was a pub in town called the Rugby Arms. It's called the Rugby Arms because Bath is a big, big, big rugby team, rugby following, massive, and it was a rugby players' pub. It had been closed for a while, and suddenly it reopened as the Bath Tap, replete with rainbow flags outside.
Which can only mean one thing.
The only gay bar in Bath at the time was the Green Room at the Garrick's Head. The Garrick's was the theatre bar, so behind the Theatre Royal in Bath. Garrick's Head, named after the actor David Garrick, obviously. And it was the bar in there was known as the Green Room because, green rooms and actors waiting to go on and off. You have like a social area called the Green Room. You have it in TV. If you ever watch, I don't know, Graham Norton or somebody, they always talk about being backstage in the Green Room. Mm. The Green Room is where everybody chills out before going on stage or going on to, to film. So that was the nickname of the bar. And that was it was very theatrical, very old world, very seedy. It was full of old men, which is kind of what I am now. But it was full of old men sitting at the end of the bar watching all the chicken, and salivating and following them into the toilet. It was really rank. But kind of, a typical theatre gay bar in the kind of early 90s, I guess. And then the Bath Tap opened, this lovely little pub with rainbow flags outside, in your face, rainbow flags, for God's sake, in Bath. And it was like, It was like it genuinely was. I mean, it's just such a cliched thing to say, but it's Dorothy's opening the door in sepia, walking into a Technicolor world. You know? I mean, it sounds so ridiculous.
Okay. So before we elaborate on that, let's just set the scene a bit more and talk about the Bath scene. So was that it basically? I mean, it is a small city, right? So
maybe 100,000 people.
Yeah, so tiny. So even having a gay bar is quite a big deal. But that was essentially the scene that was all kind of around Garrick's head.
I mean, really, there were no other gay venues in Bath at that point. There were one or two bars that were accommodating, shall we say. There was a pub called the Dark Horse on the other side of town, up in the I can't remember the name of the area now. It's off kind of Snow Hill way. So the Dark Horse, it's gone now. It's been pulled down or turned into flats, sadly. That was run by a lesbian couple. And although it wasn't run as a lesbian bar, it was very gay friendly, very artsy crowd. Lots of artists, lots of musicians, lots of writers in Bath, lots of middle class people with pretensions, lots of gay people doing dinner parties. But if you were going to go out, you'd go to the Dark Horse or to the Garrick's Head kind of thing. There was nothing else. Mm-hmm. There really wasn't, and that's not to say that Bath was a massively homophobic city, and it is a city, even though it's a small city, because I genuinely never had any issue there with anybody, apart from this guy that was my best friend that I moved out with. He turned on me once, and we never spoke again. But
what?
Yeah.
But like, he didn't know you were.
No, he knew. But he was just one of those people that, oh, yeah, well, I hate the gays, but you're all right because you're Darryl kind of thing, you know. I don't like gays, but I like you.
And then suddenly it wasn't all right.
Well, no, he used that phrase to me, and I told him to fuck off out of my house and never spoke to him again.
Oh, I see. Okay.
We got a bit drunk one night, and he said something along the lines of, oh, I hate the queers, or I hate gays, or whatever it is, but I don't mind you because you're Darryl. I've known you for ages. And I was like, if you don't fucking understand what makes me who, you know, that's part of me. That's an intrinsic part of me. Is my sexuality and my sense of who I am. Basically, get the fuck out of my house. I never want to see you again. And I haven't spoken to him since.
But what a strange example of like privilege and thinking like, oh yeah, it's fine for me to say this to someone and there's going to be no repercussions.
Yeah, well, you know, in vino veritas, as they say.
Wait, who says that?
It's the Romans. The Romans. The guy that had it, that first ran the place, was called Alan. I'm trying to think of his partner's name, and it completely escapes me. I've got a feeling it's something like Patrick, but I can't remember. Alan was probably around about my age, so, you know, 30, 31 at that time. He'd been married, straight married, and then had left his wife, taken up with this guy. This was their first pub, and shortly after they moved to the pub, they were outed by the Sun. The Sun did a big piece on how he'd walked out with his wife to shack up with this young gay guy and open Bath's gay pub. But
why? Wait, what?
Because that's what people did in the 1990s, especially if you were the Sun, because people were shits.
But was he well known?
No.
What?
No, he wasn't. But he was, you know, he had a wife and he walked out on his wife and met a bloke, or they'd met a bloke, so left his wife, and that was enough reason for them to splash a page and a half on him and
ruin his life for that period.
Well, actually, it didn't. It was really good publicity for the pub, but that's what they wanted to do. Yeah, sure. I don't know if it was, you know, sour grapes on her part. She went to them with the story. I've got no idea, but they did this big piece on him.
How bizarre.
Yeah. Well, that's what people did then, you know, and that's only 25 26 years ago. Yeah.
Shit.
That's what papers like the Sun did. You know, the News of the World was around then. That's what they did. They ruined lives. they shamed, they told people where these people worked, where they lived, the whole shebang. It was just horrendous. Even in the mid-90s, even after going through AIDS and dealing with Section 28 and all those kind of things, that's what those kind of papers did to people. Just evil.
Just horrible. But so he ended up getting lots and lots of press out of it. So the bar was heaving.
Yeah, so the tap had opened 95, one room bar, wooden floor, nice bar, very much a kind of locals pub. So most of the people you'd see in there of a day would be the same people you'd see every day. But it was a really interesting crowd because I'd never seen any of these people before. And suddenly there was, a dozen or more regular gay men and a couple of, lesbians who had crawled out of the woodwork and were using this place. And it was always busy. It was every single night it was busy. A couple of nights of the week they'd have maybe a drag act or a karaoke, the typical kind of things you did then. Bit of drag, bit of karaoke. I think one night a week there's probably bingo. Then eventually, as I said, they opened up the cellars and put a little dance floor in down there. They'd have a DJ. It was always busy. It was always busy.
And so what did it offer the scene that the Garrick's Head didn't?
Well, the Garrick's Head was really seedy. Garrick's Head was seedy. It was old fashioned. It was patterned carpet flop wallpaper, pictures of Derek Nimmo on the wall kind of thing,
Wait, who's Derek Nimmo?
He's an actor. I was just trying to think of the name of an actor.
Okay. So he's not like some kind of queer icon or anything that I just don't know about. Okay.
No, it was all, they were all, it was 8x10s of, I don't know, Lionel Blair and people like that.
Wait, who's Lionel Blair?
Sorry, you don't know Lionel Blair? Are you joking?
No, I'm not. No.
I forget you're foreign.
I quite enjoy just winding you up, though. So yeah, there's that.
So the Garricks or the Green Room always had a very dour, seedy. It wasn't a place where young, hippish, not hippie-ish people would go.
Yeah.
You wouldn't. If you lived in Bath and you wanted to go to a gay pub, you'd go to Bristol or you'd go to Cardiff or you'd go to somewhere like that because there was nothing locally where you could sit and wear what, I don't know what the fashion would have been at that time because I was never into that kind of fashion. But let's say a crop top or something. You couldn't possibly do that in the Garricks. You'd be in a sweater and chinos and the guys would be in raincoats. It genuinely was that seedy. It really was the place where you went to pick up old thespians to earn a bit of rent money. The bath tap was completely different. It was suddenly full of people in their 20s, 30s, few older, but mostly 20s and 30s, who liked pop music and listen and would talk about, going out clubbing and these kind of things, which the Garrick's Head crowd never ever did.
And so do you remember your first time there?
They all kind of blur into one, but I can very much remember my first reaction. Yeah. And I think I certainly remember being slightly nervous about going in because you were going in on a street front, you were going in on a main street and walking straight in through the door into a pub that was, that had nailed its colours to its mast. With someone like the Green Room, it was kind of round the corner, around the side entrance to the theatre. So you could literally just be walking past it and they just nipped in. Nobody would have seen you. Mm-hmm. This was quite, it was quite brave to step over that threshold because you were telling every single person you were going into a gay pub, Now, I'm 31 at that point, and I've been out for a while, but I'm fairly new to town. So I don't know many people there at the moment. So I do remember feeling a slight feeling of trepidation about going over the threshold the first time. And I remember really clearly there was a butch dyke on the door. And she was absolutely lovely. It was so kind of like, opens the door, come on in, love, kind of thing. And he walks into the door, and it was a bunch of people in there, walked up to the bar, and Alan, who was the landlord, was the first person to serve me there. And he was just beaming like a mad thing, smiling from ear to ear. And it was so, hi, how are you? Lovely to see you. What can I get you? It was just so unbelievably friendly.
Mm.
Now, as a single gay man, up to that point, most of my experiences in gay pubs had not been massively friendly. A lot of them you go into or went into were very, very cliquey. They had lots of people sitting in corners and bitching about other people sitting in other corners. And if you went to somewhere like London or to Cardiff or something like that, you could go. Let's say Cardiff. You could go to the Golden Cross or the King's Cross. I think it was the other one. If you went to London, I would probably end up in somewhere like Bolton's or if the Bolton's were still open then, but the Coleherne. But provincial gay pubs, very, very, very cliquey. Everyone knows everyone. Everyone turns their nose up at everybody. Everyone stares at everybody as they come through the door because they're either new meat, and available to anybody, or it's somebody that everyone's shagged already and is falling out with. This wasn't like that. This genuinely wasn't. This was really, really friendly. And the second you walked into that place, Alan and I wish I could remember his name. I'm sure it's Patrick.
Let's just go with Patrick.
Let's go for Patrick. It'd probably end up being, I don't know, Peter. It was Peter. It was Alan and Peter. I knew it was a P. Alan and Pete, Alan and Pete. Of course it was. Alan and Pete would do their absolute best to make you feel that you had a home there.
Mm.
And it was devastating, genuinely devastating, to walk into a pub as a single person, as a single gay person, and not feel that everybody was eyeing you up, not feel that everybody was thinking you were a bit of mud, and to feel comfortable.
So this is something that I've discussed a few times with a number of people, that really interesting thing about the atmosphere being set by the people that own the place, which I know is obvious because it's their baby, it's their thing, they're kind of creating that environment and they're creating that vibe. But just how important that is.
Absolutely. And that's the same in straight pubs as well. I've worked in many, many straight pubs over the years. And if the staff aren't on the ball, if the landlord, landlady aren't friendly and welcoming, you've got a shitty pub.
Yeah.
No matter how good your beer is, or how good your view is.
Architecture, yeah.
If the staff aren't on it, if they are not looking after that place, pub's a hole, and it always will be a hole. And I've been lucky to work with some lovely, lovely people in pubs who really understand that, and they know how to look after customers, and they make them feel welcome. They know how to bring them in when they are clearly on their own and looking to make new friends.
So let's talk about that, because you were new to Bath.
Yeah.
So then going to the Bath tap, is that something that you would do on your own?
Yeah, totally. And that's the lovely thing about it. I had never. And again, don't forget I was 30, 31 at this point. I've been going to pubs since I was 15, 16. And I'd never enjoyed going into a pub on my own. Even before I came out, going into straight pubs, I didn't enjoy. I hated going into pubs on my own. I'd take a newspaper, I'd sit in a corner, I'd nurse a beer, and I'd get out there really quickly. I didn't like being in pubs on my own. And the Bath Tap was the first pub I'd ever been in when I felt really comfortable enough to go and get a drink and sit at the bar and just chat to whoever was behind the bar or whoever came in if they wanted to talk. And the Bath Tap was open all day. I think, if I remember correctly, we were just about at the period where opening hours had changed, and you used to have a situation where a pub could open at lunchtime, but would have to close in the afternoon. They would open again in the evening. I think, if I recall correctly, around about now, pubs could open at let's say 10, 11 o'clock, I think it would have been lunchtime, and could stay up until 11 at night. And it's before 24-hour drinking, all that kind of thing came in. But so the bath tap was open all day. And I would happily go in there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, for example. And I did on many, many occasions. And sit in the corner with a cup of coffee, or maybe have a drink, or maybe hang around for a couple of hours, chat to whoever was behind the bar, whoever came in, until a few people came in that I'd got to know, through drinking there, and then maybe stay all night. But it was one of those places where I felt really, really comfortable. Mm-hmm. And it was fabulous. I'd take straight friends there. I'd take queer friends there. Anybody that came to visit, the first place we go to was the bath tap. It was just so welcoming.
And so let's talk about talking to strangers.
Mm-hmm.
Are you more the type, I mean, I think I know the answer to this question already, but are you more the type to strike up a conversation, or do you kind of wait patiently for people to talk to you?
I am now. I never used to be. I was definitely the sort of person that would sit in a corner and hope people hadn't seen me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So not kind of like, because I remember lots of times when I would go places and be like, and the thing about me is I have resting bitch face, so I just come across really like cold and aloof, and so I would just be sitting in the corner, too afraid to say hello to anyone, and hoping that someone would start a conversation with me, which inevitably didn't happen.
I wouldn't talk to people unless I'd had a few drinks inside me, and that took a while. And the tap was one of the places where actually I started to really come out of my shell in that respect, and because I'd been so welcomed and so I'm made to feel so welcome, is that if I was sitting at the bar in there just having a coffee, or as I said, a beer or whatever, and somebody walked in who was clearly nervous or didn't know the place, I'd nod and say, "Hi, how you doing? You okay?" And I would start to make conversation with people, and I never used to do that. And I think that was probably the first place where I felt comfortable enough to do that as a customer. Before that, when I'd worked behind a bar, you have to do it.
Yeah.
And so you do learn those skills anyway. You have those skills with you, but still I wouldn't necessarily use them. And it really was a place like that made me feel, these people coming in here are just as nervous as I was first time round, just as worried about what people might think about them. Just go up and say hi. And it really was that kind of place for a little while. And very quickly, it became a second home. I wouldn't be in there every night. I'd be in there maybe 3 times a week. Always at a weekend, always on the weekend, and usually once or so during the week. And it just became a place where I wanted to be, where I knew a whole bunch of people, where I knew I'd have fun, and I felt comfortable and safe.
That's good to hear. But so let's talk more about talking to strangers. Did you ever have the experience? Because this is one of the problems with queer spaces, is that because the thing that you have in common is your sexuality. Yeah. When you talk to strangers, they often make the assumption that you're hitting on them.
Yeah. I can't think of an instance where that's been a problem.
So it's just me then, that everyone.
No. I'm trying to think. Yeah, no, I don't know. I think one of the things I've always found, well, certainly for as long as I can remember, is because I'm quite a big guy, and because I'm big and I'm kind of loud and I'm kind of hairy and stuff. I either frighten people because they're scared I'm going to hit them, or people just assume I'm a great big teddy bear, which is the truth. People don't tend to think anything else outside of that. And the other thing about that, having said, big and hairy and loud and stuff, is around about this time I was discovering this thing called, bear culture at the same time as the tap was happening. So it was kind of opening up all sorts of avenues to me that I'd never thought of it before. And one of the things about the bear scene at that point in the mid-90s, because again, it was a very, very new thing, is suddenly fat, bald, hairy blokes they fitted in, and suddenly people were finding them attractive. So it was kind of weird to go from feeling very unattractive, feeling very nervous, feeling very unwanted in spaces, to be in a space where I'm not hitting on other people, people are hitting on me. And that's bizarre, absolutely bizarre, because that really hadn't happened to me before.
And so the bear, let's talk about bears. As a phenomenon, do you know the kind of where it starts? And
it starts in the States. It starts in San Francisco, and it's a reaction to the AIDS and HIV crisis. So during the mid to late 80s, people dying left, right, and center, looking incredibly emaciated. If you walked into a gay pub and you looked thin, there was an assumption you were ill. So there was a backlash against that. Suddenly, chubbier, tubbier, hairier, not muscular necessarily, but kind of avuncular guys. The assumption was that these people weren't disease carrying.
Wow.
That's where it starts. I know that sounds horrific putting it like that, but that's the crux of it. That's how it starts. That's how the bear scene started. I don't think it was a conscious decision, but suddenly there was an interest in plumper guys, and that's the assumption was that these guys wouldn't be carrying a disease with them.
Just a quick side note, I do love that word plump.
Yeah, plump.
So then in kind of discovering that there was this scene and that there was this, I'm going to use the word phenomenon again because I like that word as well. I know you've kind of touched on this already, but how did that make you feel?
It genuinely was, it was phenomenal. It was mind expanding. It really was. I had never imagined in my life that it sounds ridiculous, but it's true. I had never, ever imagined up until that point in my life that people would find me attractive. It wasn't an issue for me. I'd never had much, up to that point, certainly, I had very, very little confidence in the way I looked. I didn't like the way I looked. I've always been a big guy. I've always been overweight. I'm a lot more overweight than I was. It's one, but I've always had that extra few pounds or few stone. I started to lose my hair when I was in my teens, so I was already had the receding hairline. I hadn't grown a beard at that point, but I'd had a moustache for a while. I always had a thing about my lips. This is one of the reasons I have a moustache and beard is I don't like my lips.
What's wrong with your lips?
My top lip's really thin, and I don't like it.
What?
Anyway, this is me. This is me. Okay. I did not. I was okay with the fact that I was bald in it and wore glasses and was and all that kind of stuff. And I was chunky. I'd come to terms with it, and I was okay about it. But it was the first time that complete strangers were starting to hit on me. And it was a really, really weird experience. And I bloody loved it. I genuinely loved it. I've never, ever had an experience like it. And it changed my life. It absolutely changed my life. It completely,
in what ways?
Well, it made me look at myself in a completely different way for a start. It made, and it does, doesn't it? If you know that other people find you attractive, you start to think about yourself in a different way. You hold yourself differently. You walk differently. You don't shy away in a corner and hunch up and hide so much. The neck stretches up a bit. You walk with maybe a slight swagger. I don't know, but you comport yourself in a different way. And I went from feeling like I was ugly and uninteresting, and I'd be lucky to have a few friends, to suddenly having people asking me out, and people not only asking me out, but asking me to do other things with them. And
other things? To elaborate.
And having some really interesting sexual experiences, which had been happening, but they've been very few on the ground, few and far between, and a bit vanilla. Suddenly more interesting things are happening in my life. And it was bloody fantastic. I loved it. I loved every second of it. I was tart for a little while. Not for very long, because I found out that that casual sex really doesn't do anything for me. It's a bit unrewarding and fulfilling. But for a little while, I was a bit of a tart, and I bloody loved it.
Does this overlap at all with bath tap? And should we continue down this line of conversation? Or?
No, it does. It absolutely continues with the bath tap, because here we go. About a year or so after the bath tap had been open, I started working at a pub just around the corner from where I was living. The pub was called the White Hart. It was a biker's pub, and I made no bones about being gay. Everybody knew I was gay. There was never an issue. But I was very welcomed by the two people, the landlord and landlady that ran it, who are still my friends today, by most of the regulars, several of whom are still my friends today, and by a lot of the bikers that came in, who never gave me any grief about being gay at all. Never an issue with them whatsoever. And so, again, that's another boost to the ego, isn't it? That's another self-confidence fillip, if you like. You're boosting that all the time. My time in Bath was fabulous, because I went from a bloody wallflower to being a very, very confident person. Mm-hmm. Annie, who was the landlady at the White Hart, used to come to the Bath tap with me on a weekend. So we'd be working on a Sunday night in the pub in the White Hart. Pub would close, usually close early, because by kind of 10 o'clock the pub was empty. So we'd often close early. We'd go over to the tap for the last hour, which they would always have cabaret on at that point. They'd almost always a drug act. So we'd go and we'd catch into them. We'd knock quite a few back while we were there. And then that last hour, we'd and you could smoke in pubs in those days. So drinking and smoking and doing the whole shebang. And then when the tap closed, we would all, as a group, maybe a dozen or so of us, of the kind of regulars, we would then go off there was a hotel in Bath. And although the hotel was closed, they had the downstairs bar, which is supposed to be for residents only, would let you in if you knew them. And so a bunch of us, 10 or 12 people, would go there on a Sunday night, best part of midnight, and maybe stay there till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, couple of last drinks. So you had a bunch of gay people moving from one side of the city up right into the center of the city, screaming, laughing, joking, maybe doing an occasional tablet on the way up. The only time I've ever taken a pill then I didn't know what was. Somebody just gave me a pill while I was on the way up there, and I thought, oh, fuck it, let's do it. And I did it, and I shouldn't, and I've never done it since, but I did it. And we go into the, I think it was the Northgate Hotel, if I remember correctly, and we go into the cellar bar down there, and we'd stay there for another couple of hours till they decided they wanted us out. And so Annie became part of that Bath tap crew. And then it must have been 97, because I was still in the same flat. I was in that flat for 3 years, 94 through 97. Annie and I organised a coach trip from the Bath tap up to Gloucester to go to Crackers. And so we'd organised a coach trip, and we filled a coach from the Bath tap, drove up to Crackers for their Monday night is gay night thing. And I met this guy there who became my boyfriend for the next few months. So yes, there's a crossover for you. And he was dirty.
That's so kind of garden variety dirty, or like dirty?
No, he was,
I mean, we've probably got different thresholds here.
He was a very strange person, let's put it that way. He did drag. He was huge. He was a really, really big guy. He was about 6'4" and probably about 18 stone. He was enormous. And I'm best part of 6 foot, and he towered over me. But he seemed to be a really nice, friendly, lovely guy. We got on like a house on fire the first time we met. We met that night at Crackers. And then the following night, he came to visit me and stayed overnight in Bath. And he very quickly became part of my life. But he was a fantasist. He was telling all sorts of lies about his private life, which were just rubbish. He told me he had kids when he didn't. He told me he was married when he wasn't. He was a complete fantasist. And so after a few months, I kind of twigged that he was just spinning me a line, and I ended it. But for a couple of months, we had an interesting sex life. Nothing too outrageous. Nothing too outrageous. Nothing that two blokes shouldn't be doing in a bedsit in Bath.
You're building this up to be something, and I'm like,
no, it's not. It's honestly not. It's really not. It's not. But it was a fun few months. But he had to go.
Well, yeah.
But again,
scratch that itch.
But again, it scratched that itch, and it helped build the confidence again. You know, I'd gone out for the night with a bunch of friends, and I'd been the only one that bloody pulled. You know, which is nuts. If you think of it, when I thought about it, it's absolutely nuts. I was the one that pulled. I was the one that had some guy, you know, drive that 30 miles down the motorway to come and visit, and basically wanted to stay with me. So, you know, I was doing okay. Thank you very much. It was a fascinating time. Really, really interesting time in my life.
But he was a fantasist.
Yeah. Well, you know, I had 2 or 3 months of great sex. Who cares?
Yeah, okay.
And he used to work at Cheltenham Racecourse in the catering department. So he used to bring home, you know, huge bags of bacon and stuff like that. So I was fine. I didn't pay for any food for 3 or 4 months.
He quite literally brought home the bacon. Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
He brought this massive bag of pre-cooked, kind of smoky, crispy bacon, the kind of stuff you'd kind of probably break over, I don't know, jacket potatoes or something like that. I had this enormous catering bag of pre-cooked bacon in my fridge that I just used for sandwiches or whatever. You know.
Okay, but so we're not still talking about freaky sex, are we?
No. We're really talking about bacon. Not that sort of pig. Yeah, the sex wasn't that freaky, but it was fun. It was fun.
So what comes first then? You leaving Bath or the bath tap closing?
Me leaving Bath, but it changed hands several times. Alan and Peter were only there for about maybe 4 years, I guess, maybe 5. 5 might be stretching it, but certainly 4 years. And it felt like every successive landlord or manager or couple that came in didn't really know what to do with the place. They tried doing food. Food was never very good. They tried having upstairs rooms to let out. That didn't really work. They tried different types of music on the DJ nights. It didn't really happen. And it was kind of it lost its edge kind of quickly. It stayed open. I left Bath in 2004. So I've been there for 10 years, and I moved from Bath to Bristol, where I am now still 16 years later. And the bath tap was still there for a couple of years after that. It closed down, it reopened, it closed down, it reopened. The last incarnation I'm aware of, it was run by a lesbian couple who were doing quite well with it. But by that time, another gay pub had opened in Bath. That was a pub called Mandolins, which was originally owned by a lesbian couple. And that did really well. That did really good business. They knew exactly how to look after their crowd. Again, lovely, friendly couple. Lots of different theme nights, lots of stuff happening. And at this point, of course, the licensing hours had changed, the smoking ban had come in. There are lots of reasons why you wouldn't want to hang around a single one-room bar anymore, you know? And so a lot of a lot of the business, not the trade, I don't know where the trade went, but a lot of the business moved to Mandolins. It was called Mandolins because it was owned by a couple called Amanda and Lynn, you see. Mandolin.
Well, of course.
Although they split up, but shortly after they moved into the pub, and then Lynn stayed with, she got a new partner, Claire, who's lovely and still a friend of mine today.
Wait, so what would that be? Mandelaire?
No, they kept the name. They didn't change it. It didn't become, it would be Claire de Lunes, I suppose, or something like that. It didn't change. But and then the mandolins is still there today. It's changed hands several times. It doesn't have the same following, but it's still there. The Bath Tap, I think, closed for good closed around about 2008, and then reopened briefly for about a year, then closed again, then reopened as a gastropub, which had changed its name. I think it was called the 15 or the 19 or something like that. And that's now closed as well. So I think that closed maybe 4 years ago, and I don't believe there's anything there now. It's a huge shame that it's no longer there, and it's a shame that Alan and Peter went off and went to do whatever they did. But things move on, things change, everything changes. I'm just grateful it was there at a time of my life that I really needed it. I don't know if I would have had as positive an experience of living in Bath. I lived in Bath for 10 years and loved every second of it. I don't know if it would have been anything like as good if that place hadn't been there. And I doubt very much I'd be the person I am, married to the person I'm married to, if it hadn't been for that pub and those people making me feel more at one with myself. I genuinely believe that.
Did you ever go to Bath Tap? Well, if you did, I would love to hear from you. Please share any stories or photos that you have from that time. You can reach me on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, under the user handle @KAndersonMusic. And you can also find out more about Darryl at his website, worldsworstrecords.blogspot.com, and look out for his new book, The Velvet Mafia, The Gay Men Who Ran the Swinging 60s, which comes out in 2021. Lost Spaces is not only a podcast, but a concept record as well. I've been writing songs about queer venues and the people who used to live their lives there, and will be releasing songs over the coming year. You can hear the first single, Well-Groomed Boys, which is also playing underneath my talking right now, on all good streaming platforms. If you liked this episode, I would really appreciate if you subscribed, left a review on Apple Podcasts, or just told people who you think might also be interested. I am Kay Anderson, and you have been listening to Lost Spaces.